A number of things are taking place in the world, and we'll be getting to those. And of course, we've got exciting news coming from Houston, Texas, because that's where Kim Calhoun, one of the founders of the network, is. And of course, she's there for CERAWeek. So we'll be having folks coming on talking about what they've learned and things along those lines. The U.S. has submitted a UN resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, according to Blinken. So Blinken says that negotiations on a ceasefire and hostage release are getting closer. So it does look like there may be some closure in that particular event coming up in the near future. So we'll see if that is the case or not the case. And EU leaders are gathering with Ukraine ammunition production and Gaza aid at the top of their agenda. And understand from Kim that we may be having some access to the UN in the very near future as well. And thousands are sheltering from a Kyiv missile barrage hours after Biden's national security advisor came to visit, and all in that space. So, like I said on yesterday, Irish's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar has resigned, and Simon Harris has become the front runner to be the next Irish premier. So definitely that's what way it seems like it's going in that space. And like I said before, Vietnam's president has resigned as well, raising questions over stability in that part of the world. So like I said, there are these cases where presidents, not just here in the United States, but in other parts of the world, are facing all kinds of crises and in some cases are resigning. And South Africa is dealing with a water crisis. So the South African water crisis sees taps running dry across Johannesburg. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news as South Africa's biggest city faces an unprecedented water crisis affecting millions. And I know we used to have a young lady that used to be part of the South African music scene, and maybe we'll find a way to get in touch with that particular individual and see if she can come in and talk about what's going on in that part of the world. It's been a minute since we've heard from Alexandra May and all in that space, but maybe we can find a way to get in touch with her and see if she could come in to talk about that particular part of what's happening and all in that way. In Indonesia, Rohingya Muslim refugees are rescued after surviving a night at sea. So at least 69 refugees were rescued after their boat capsized off of Indonesia. So definitely that is something that we're seeing in the news, just like we're seeing the Russian threat is forcing Europe to choose bolster defense or protect social spending. So that whole notion of what to do with social spending isn't just a United States problem. It is one that is going on throughout the world and all in that space. In Portugal, Portugal's center-right leader, Luis Montenegro, has invited folks to form a minority government. So that is something that we're seeing as well, as he was nominated as the prime minister after a narrow election. And we do know that in some parts of the world, there's this notion of coalition government. So we'll see if that is going to be successful or not. And the U.S. is rejecting China's claim to Arunachal Pradesh, saying it is part of India. So definitely it looks like the Chinese are saying that it is a part of their nation, and apparently India is saying it's part of theirs, and the U.S. is recognizing Arunachal Pradesh as an Indian territory, according to what some folks are seeing. And speaking of Asian news, China is tightening its grips on Hong Kong with the passage of a strict law punishing dissents. So we're definitely seeing that in the news as well. And it looks like in South Korea will take final steps to suspend the licenses of striking junior doctors. So we do know that this whole notion of doctors trying to get better working conditions and better pay and a number of other things isn't just something that happens in the West. It's something that happens all over the world. So definitely looks like Seoul is even allocating new medical school slots despite the doctor strike. So there is a doctor strike in that part of the world and all along those lines. So definitely there are a number of things that are going on. And we'll get to some of the others, including some of the things that are taking place with what's happening in the United States and all along those lines. So we're looking to hearing more about what's going on, but we've also got people that are reporting live from CERAWeek. So we're definitely going to get to that. And we've got some very special guests that will be joining us that are Grammy winners as well. So I'm glad to have had the pleasure to have invited them, and they're going to come on and talk about abstract Logic, which is their company based here in the Research Triangle Park. But before we get to that and some of the things that are going on with them, and yes, having the pleasure to have met them, and I believe, if I remember correctly, they're of Indian descent, but definitely they've had some major success here in the music world. So Sasha might be interested in them as well. But Kim, I'm glad that you're here, and I know we've got others here as well. But if you want to just share with us, because we've also got, I think it was Liz that was here as well. But if you want to share some of the things that you've got going on in that part of the world with Houston, Texas, and everything like that, I'm sure that our folks would be interested. And then, like I said, I do have some other guests who will be coming talking about their success with what they've got going on. And they were in LA for the Grammys. But definitely, I'd love to hear how things are going on at CERAWeek.
Oh, well, everything's going great. Glad to see you guys. I hope everything's going good there. It's cold and wet, so we're having to, dodge the cold, rainy bullets, but we're having a good time. We've learned a lot. We've gained a lot of information. We're going to have some breaking news later this afternoon for everyone. One of our esteemed journalist has some really interesting news for the world, and we hope to present it around 11:30, as well as around the World Politics show this evening at 4 p.m. Texas time. But all is good here. I think the big word that everyone is using for alternative energy is hydrogen. There's a lot of hydrogen. They're talking about it being cleaner, easy to convert to. The transitions are a lot more affordable. I went into the automobile section yesterday, and the EV cars are becoming just more and more sexier. I'll get some pictures of them. But they're nice looking, and there's a lot to be said about them. And they're not just EV cars; they also have low energy using gas. Again, we are here at CERAWeek by S&P Global, and we are here for the oil, gas, and energy conversations that are brought together, sharing information from all the world leaders. I have here with me Christina Duque. She has just been very, very helpful, helping me get things set up. And we're just, two sets of feet on the street here trying to get all the information we can. How are you? Are you having a good time, Christina?
Yes, definitely. CERAWeek has been amazing. Good morning, everyone. How are you? We've had some excellent conversations. Last night we met with Deanne, who we're going to be interviewing later today. She's the VP of a Canadian oil company. Later on this afternoon, Bill Gates is also scheduled to speak. So I'm super excited about that. And it's just been a great time here in Houston.
We will have some really interesting guests. One of the executive officers from Exxon Oil will be coming down here to meet with us, as well as a couple of other CEOs from the industry. Like I said, we've been knocking on a lot of doors, haven't we?
Definitely.
So be looking forward to some of our live interviews throughout the day that we'll be programming as they come in.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to that and everything. Christina, who are some of the people you met? I know that last time when Isaiah was on, I think he had met the former president of Colombia, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, former president.
So just wondering who are some of the folks that you've had the pleasure of meeting and talking to, and how has it been being in that kind of environment, being able to meet some of these world leaders?
Oh, it's been amazing. I mean, we've met so many people, but we also went to the press briefing with the senator of Alaska and also the senator of West Virginia. So that was amazing to hear them speak, and we got to follow up with them afterwards as well.
Sounds like there's some great conversations and everything in that space and all along those lines. I'm sure that other people have some conversations and questions for you. But before we get to that, I did want to bring in my other guests as well, because like I said, I knew that I had them on and I invited them some time back, and they were in that space of being entrepreneurs here in North Carolina. So I wanted to bring on Souvik and Shewat, and I hope that I pronounced their names correctly and everything, but they are the founders of Abstract Logic and all in that way. And like I said, they had the pleasure of having a couple of their performers win Grammys and all in that space. So if you'll share a little bit about what Abstract Logic is, because if I remember correctly, I know that y'all are of, if memory is serving me correctly, in Indian descent and everything along those lines. But if you can share a little bit about your background and about the company and about the success that you're having.
Thanks, Mark, for having us. We are from Cary, North Carolina. We've been living here as citizens of Cary for 25 plus years. Coming out of the university and working at a high tech company in the park, kind of pursued my hobby of music, and we started a record label in 2005. We primarily been working with American jazz and sort of a rock musicians. Uh, some of them you might heard about them, for example, Jimmy Herring from Aquarium Rescue Unit and Widespread Panic, a very popular band in North Carolina. We've been working with jazz guitar legend John McLaughlin for about 20 years. And it was his project called Shakti that won the Grammy for the Best Global Music Album. And this is our 70th album that we produced for our label, and it's our second Grammy. So thank you.
What was the first Grammy?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What was the first Grammy, by the way?
It was for John McLaughlin in 2018 for a smaller category called Best Jazz Improvised Solo for his album Live at Ronnie Scott's, where he covered a Miles Davis song. And but this one being the Best Global Music Album, and Shweta and I are the producers of the entire project and the world tour. So it's a little extra special for us, Mark.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very extra special. If you could just share a little bit about your technology background, because I know that Kim Calhoun has got some background in engineering. She is one of our founders, but she also has a lover of music as well. So could you share a little bit about the technology background that you have and how that has even played into your music background also?
Sure. Nice question. So I went to a local university and I got my like in North Carolina, I kind of moved to the park in 97, 98 timeframe. I started at Northern Telecom, I remember, as a 22-year-old. And then I was into IBM right after under a year. And it's a hobby that I just had, like being a young developer programmer, you come home and you work on your hobby and passion, which happened to be my music. 20 years I'm still at IBM, and my wife Shweta runs our hobby that has become a little bit more than a hobby, but we still are connected with the arts a lot, because arts is important for us. Arts and music is just the other facet of our lives, and both seems to be going just fine.
It sounds like it's going really fine, and all along those lines. How important do you think it is for music? Because I know that sometimes Nick Valveda, who's one of our founders here on the network, talks about the notion of what we need to be teaching, and he's a big fan of financial literacy and understanding the importance of business and everything. And you have a technology background, but also a business background also. So I'm just wondering, how much do you think it is important for our young people to learn about music and just to learn about life in general from a artistic standpoint?
I mean, I cannot tell you how important for us is music and arts for all our lives, right? I kind of grew up in India, East India, until I was 17. Both my parents were also engineers, but music was a really important part of our lives growing up. They were actively into music, after their day job. Mine's kind of similar, because it kind of neutralizes everything that like kind of like a very intense work day, and the music and the arts part of things is a perfect complement. So for me and from like our daughter, we are all about encouraging her with arts and music. And I think in the area, I think the schools and the universities are also quite active, and I cannot stress the importance of arts and music in our kids' lives.
Yeah. How important has it been to learn business knowledge as well? Because like I said before, I know that Nick is a big fan of fiscal literacy and all along those lines. So I know that I'm wondering, how much has the engineering background been able to help you even in running the label? Because I'm thinking that you already had a better understanding of business than some other people might have that get into the arts just kind of like in a entry level, whereas y'all had that background in the engineering space. And like you said, you'd worked for Northern Tel and for IBM before starting this music label, which has had this tremendous success and everything. So how important has that knowledge been in terms of you being able to create this company that has had this tremendous success?
But I mean, before it became a company, it was a little website blog, and it all really started in 2002 at a private concert in our house, and the musician that we requested to come and perform, they would not perform at somebody's house. The deal was we had to broadcast the concert or like basically over the internet. This is really pre-YouTube. Because we came from technology, because we had friends in the industry, we were able to broadcast the concert from our living room across the globe using, older technology from 2001 and 2. So that was really important. And then once that kind of picked up, and I was very familiar with web technologies, and at the time, even with e-commerce. So I got into, so my first break, even before we formed the label, was to run a little e-commerce site for a friend musician of mine. And because I had the technology background, it was easier for me to set up a single page site with the product and basically integrate with some payment companies like PayPal's of the stuff. This is 20 years ago. That got me into the door. That got me into the door because I had that background in engineering and e-commerce especially. And not that I had much experience about business at all. I'm a technology guy, but you learn on the job, right? And we all learned on the job, and Sweta is really kind of taking over the business part of it. And so I can still focus on technology, music. That's really my main two loves, and she can kind of run the business. Um, but we've learned a lot, like on the job for 20 some years.
Yep. Sweta, just really quickly, if you could talk a little bit about the business side and how much you learned. Because like I said, I think that you had that Indian background as well. So if you could just talk a little bit about how much you've learned on the business side. Because like I said, you have started a record label. I don't know if you ever had an aspirations of having a record label, but the record label has had success because as you just said, you've had 2 Grammys that y'all have produced and everything. So what has it been like starting this business, and was music something, because your husband mentioned that he was into music, that you were always interested in, and did you even have visions of starting a record label way back when?
Uh, like you said, we've grown up in India with music all our lives. Every child in India, either you dance or you pick up an instrument. So in India, my parents, my mother, in fact, she was a singer and she used to sing. My dad was a businessman. So when I came into the country and then he had this vision of doing this abstract law, he was already into it. And then we took, that time it was tiny and it was from our living room and we didn't have any business acumen, but slowly it started growing. And then when I came into the business, I took over the logistics part of it, which I did not want to go to the artistic part, which he was taking care of, the artists, right? Like choosing the right artist and to get into our label and all that. But the business part is like, getting the everyday, the operational work. We even to get to the Grammy, this Grammy journey, it was like a 2-year journey for us. We started planning this 2 years back. And that's how the planning started, and then they toured all over the world. We started with a huge tour in India. Then we followed it with Europe. And then we came to the America.
Wow. Just really quickly, and then I'll open it up to other folks. I know we got other issues that folks want to get to as well. But how did the name Abstract Logic come up? Because like I said, that is definitely an interesting name. So how did that come up as the name for the label, and how did y'all come up with that naming?
If you really want to know, I'll give you a real nutshell. If you're a technology guy and you're a software developer, you know what object-oriented program is. And abstraction is a very important component of object-oriented programming. At the time, I was really consumed in learning about object-oriented programming. And secondary, there's a real dear friend of mine who had a great album called Abstract Logic, Logic. It's by an artist called Jonas Hellborg and Sean Lane. Anyway, so I just thought that, I had to come up with a name for this website within a few days just to broadcast the show. I just said, a good intersection between two backgrounds, I would just come up with the name Abstract. And rather than using the word logic, I would use the word X, because X programming is also really important in the world of technology. So that's how Abstract Logic came up. It doesn't make any sense, but yet it makes sense.
Understand. Just really quickly, because I know that, and I saw your hand up, Rick, and Jacoby might be having questions, as will Shaquille. But I do know that Kim has a background with IBM, if I remember it correctly, as well, and has definitely worked with the whole knowledge of the technology. And she's one of the founders of Pod TV. And I know that Nick Palveda is here with us as well, so he may be joining us later on. But Kim, you've got some fellow people that are in your lane that have started a record label over there in Cary and are doing quite successful. But I know you've got some of that similar background. So I just wondering your thoughts around what they've done, because they've won 2 Grammys. Who knows? Maybe they're going to get 3 and 4 Grammys later on as well. But I just wanted your take on what they've done and y'all's common ground. You're on mute, Kim.
I got it. All right. Turn it down. So first off, I want to congratulate you on bringing home the gold more than once. That is a feat in itself. I've worked in telecom for about 20 years, so I know probably what you went through. My husband worked with IBM for over 40 years, so great company. Stick to it. Not the best retirement benefits today, but save your money and work with them. They're a good company. But in the music industry, it is a huge challenge. And I did some work in Nashville. Wrote a song, actually took it to stage, and we got a great reception from the crowd. But then COVID hit, so and I decided just to stick with what I do best. Because you guys have been doing this a long time. But what do you do that gives you some of the creativity to create what you do? I mean, that's a lot. So what gave you the inspiration to do what you won your Grammy with?
I mean, Kim, Grammy is just an after effect of what we do, right? We don't go into this thinking about a Grammy or any award or any recognition whatsoever, okay? We want to have music and art in our lives. We are grateful for the folks that decide to work with us. For example, Jimmy Herring is a musician from North Carolina who performs with a very successful band called Widespread Panic. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And he could go to anybody on the planet, but he decides to work with us, a small little enterprise from Cary, North Carolina, and we've maintained that relationship for 15 years. Music enriches our lives every day, every moment, and this is our little way of giving back to music. Grammys or anything else, it can come or not come. It's kind of wonderful to be recognized. We're grateful for it, but that's not what we do.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. What we do.
Yeah, we didn't even start this project thinking that it's going to go to the. We knew we were going to send in the entry for Grammy, and we didn't even think that it's going to be winning at that level. So.
How exciting! You've got something wonderful, but you mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people grasp, and it's the relationship that you had and that you continue to work with each other. That's what's very important as well. You're right. Music is a very important part of our daily lives, but it's when you're collaborating with people that you love working with, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yes. And being from the technology background, it helped because we recorded this album with people from 5 different parts of the world remotely, over and over on Zoom during the pandemic every Sunday for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So the music was being recorded from Seattle to Monte Carlo to London to Cary and running off a studio, like basically in some other part of the world. So everything was done in real true remote collaboration.
How important has it been for you, just really quickly, because a lot of the music that y'all are a part of is what some people would call roots music and everything. So whether that's country, whether that's blues, or that's a number of other things. So how important is it for you to work with musicians that are in some ways traditional musicians and doing some music that is recognized as being some of the American greats, whether that is jazz, whether that is blues, whether that is country, or a number of the other styles, including some of the rock music that you mentioned, because I do know who Widespread Panic is. But how important has it been for you to work with these kind of roots musicians?
I mean, there are people already that are working with much successful stars, pop, rock, or anything else. We are more interested in creative music. Personally, we have to love the music to work within the music. So, that's the first important criteria. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this for, firstly, our fulfillment. Okay. That's the top priority. That's the marker for everything. Once we believe in the music, once we believe in the project, once we believe in all of that stuff, we're going to put our heart and soul into it to enrich our lives and lives of others via this creative music. Whether it wins a Grammy or not is a secondary affair.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Definitely, we've got the young lady that's with us as well. But Rick, you had a question, and I was going to see if I think her name
this
is
is a question
Christine,
for
if I remember
people.
correctly. Yeah, go ahead.
This
Go ahead,
is
Rick.
for people at the Energy Conference and/or Sharif or anybody who knows where conservatives say we've lost energy independence under Biden, and liberals say under Biden we've had record domestic oil production in 2023, 2022, and also this year. So can anybody offer some insight into what's actually going on?
I barely heard that. Ask the first part of the question.
All right. So Republicans say that we've lost energy independence under Biden. And liberals say under Biden, we've had record oil production, setting records in 22, 2023, and this year again. So what's the deal?
So I think to say that we have independence is a far reach. We've met a lot of people from Canada here, and I think they've got more independence than we do. I think that our government probably didn't negotiate the best of deals, and it wasn't Biden's, it was Trump's administration. And we will be doing some breaking news on this afternoon, and you'll get to hear some of the truth on it. But I will say this, we're not set up the way we were told we were set up. But can we fix it? Yes. How are we going to do it? By replacing some of the leaders that we have. That's the only way we're going to fix this.
Hey, just really quickly, I had a question similar to what Rick just asked, but it's actually for our musician friends and everything. I know that in the film industry, there used to be a lot of government support that you would get. There was this whole notion of tax credits and everything. So as business owners, was there any kind of government assistance that you got either in creating the record label or that you are hoping to get? Because I do know that there have been one of the kind of criticisms of the film industry here in North Carolina is that we got away from those film credits and everything. So I just wondered how important has government support been in y'all's endeavor, because y'all are definitely having a successful record label. I didn't know if you got any government support in this effort, because I do know that sometimes it is a struggle to get money, even if you are successful business people, as the both of you are, but sometimes you have to turn to the government. So I was just wondering how important has that been, and have you gotten any government support, whether it was from the state of North Carolina or federally?
I mean, Mark, we haven't really asked for help from anybody, whether it's government or even private individuals. I mean, we've had offers from private individuals from just an investment standpoint, but we've been able to do it on our own for 20 years. It just helps us keep control, artistic control, all of that within just both of us. That's important to me. However, like I've traveled the world and done concerts in about 80 countries around the world for 20 years. And I know the support for arts in Europe is much more than it's in the US. In Japan, it's much more than the US. I hope we get support, because one of our dreams is to bring a multicultural festival, music and lifestyle here in the Triangle area.
Yeah.
So we are already in very, very early conversations with some people in the community. We hope that becomes a reality in the future.
Well, maybe we can get Pod TV to air that concert whenever y'all get it off the ground and everything. But what has been some of the thoughts that y'all have had in terms of your success? Because you mentioned you had gone to, I think you said 80 countries and everything, and that it is handled differently in different parts of the world. So just out of curiosity, of all the places that you have taken your performers, what is the place that you have most enjoyed? Because we have Shaquille, who's from Australia. We've got Sasha, who's from Canada, and Rick is over there in California. So what is the place that you have most enjoyed when you have traveled around the area and everything? So what's the place that you most enjoyed visiting?
Man, most of the world is beautiful. It doesn't really matter to me. I cannot tell you this place has been the best or this place is second best or the third best. Doing this for 20 years, I've made, family, almost family style friends, lifelong friends from Bali to Seoul, from Buenos Aires to St. Petersburg, right? And everywhere in between. And I must have worked at, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of jazz festivals from Montreux to North Sea to all over the world. Music is a universal language that connects us all, guys, and it's really not a cliche. Okay. I got to experience it firsthand. And we both work with people from all over the world. We have thousands and thousands of customers that purchase music from our catalog from every nook and corner of the world. We try to convert them into meaningful relationships more than just somebody buying our music.
Just
You're
really
right
quickly,
about it being a universal language, and because you work at IBM, you understand binary codes and things like that very well. I mean, as if you're working in the computer industry or even the telecom industry, it sounds like you like to be able to communicate in a universal level based on your career path. So, but you're absolutely right. Music is that binary universal code, basically.
Actually, we have a very good musician who's on our panel, which no one knows about because he
I was
keeps it
going to
secret.
bring him up because I know
And that
you saw him.
is actually Sasha Starr, the guy over here.
Yes.
He's one of the top pianists in Canada. So he's appearing from Canada. So maybe you can weigh on in the music industry because you've been in there for quite some time, Sasha.
Yeah, that's true. In my younger days, I was one of top 3 pianists in the Toronto area, and I was musical director on the cruise ships and played many concerts or so on. However, in later days, I started to gravitate more into chess, investments, and politics. Although I'm following music and I'm practicing every day for at least 1 hour. So I'm in top shape, and if you will tell me that you have to perform in 1.5 hours, I'll ask what's an address and how I can get there. So that's not a big issue. Now I've noticed what I'm doing beside playing and practicing, I'm listening to a lot of music on YouTube. And I was just a couple of days ago, I was amazed absolutely by listening to Amy Winehouse cover All My Loving Beatles tune with just a guitar player on the background. And I must say that something of that caliber of art is very often is being produced spontaneously without neither producers or even performers knowing what would be the final result. It was just a pure improvisation, a great, I would say, admiration of a style of music, and just some intangible factors that created that, in my opinion, masterpiece. I'm wondering, are you familiar with this tune?
Amy.
I am familiar with the tune and I'm a big fan of Amy Winehouse, but at the core of what you said is improvisation, which is most of the music that we produce is really improvised music, and jazz is the ultimate form of improvisation. And the thing about this album that we just produced, it's a cross-cultural connect between jazz and Indian classical music. Foundations of both are on improvisation, right? So it's just great that you mentioned that word because it kind of makes
Listen to that tune on YouTube. You'll find it very easily, and you'll understand what I mean. Really, I was impressed. I listened to that tune probably 6 or 7 times in a row. I just couldn't believe what a quality.
No, it's a great tune and everything. Just really quickly, because Sasha kind of mentioned it, as did I think Nick kind of alluded to it and everything. And Nick is one of the other, one of the 2 founders of the network, Kim being the other one and everything. But How do you find your musicians? Because you mentioned that you're a global community, and I have had the pleasure sometimes, because I do another job that is educational assessment, and sometimes the kids have to write about stuff. So sometimes they will write about musicians that I didn't even know. Like I think there was a gentleman, Rod Wave, who might be out of South Africa, if I remember, or one of the African countries. And there's a couple of other ones that I did not know about, but I would research them and find them. And some of them were quite impressive. And I was impressed with some of the music that was out there on the global stage. And some of it was new to me, and I was impressed. Don't get me wrong. There was some that was music that I wasn't impressed with, but there was quite a bit that I was impressed, whether it was coming from the Caribbean or coming from Africa or coming from Asia. So I was just wondering, how do y'all go about finding the musicians that you work with?
Mark, we are very, very fortunate that they find us.
They find us.
We are grateful because I mean, you know, the business has transformed, changed, evolved. It's not what it used to be. It's not as easy what it used to be. I think live music is probably at the center of it all now, more than recorded music, because, you know, about the streaming and everything else that happens. But we were, I mean, on pretty much day 2, John McLaughlin hired us. So when a guy like John McLaughlin hires you on day 2, the road gets a little easier, because then people like Jimmy Herring from Widespread Panic call us. That's because his hero is John McLaughlin. So that's how he found us, is who's working with my hero. So it's just gotten easier for us from day number 2.
You mentioned something earlier that I'd be curious about, because I come out of the background, as y'all can tell, and it's definitely even in the title of one of the shows that I do and everything, of radio. And sometimes people complain that there are gatekeepers in radio and in mass media that doesn't allow everybody to get the tours and the concerts that they would like to get, and even the exposure that they would like to get as well, because it's a known fact that Radio One and a number of other major conglomerates own the radio business and all in that space, and some would even argue the concert venues as well. So I was just wondering y'all's take on how easy it has been to access these venues and radio stations, or y'all content with doing what it seems like y'all are doing, which is creating your own avenues and all along those lines. But I just wonder, how do you deal with that monster out there, which is getting access into commercial media?
I mean, you know, we've been working collaboratively with venues all around the country and the world, from clubs of 100 people to like sizes of Walnut Creek or Cocoa Booth and places like that. We have close partners, whether it's Live Nation or AEG, or even a club like the Lincoln Theater in downtown Raleigh. And we work with small venues all over the world, whether it's a cafe in Montreal, or whether it's a club in Raleigh, or whether it's a club in Indonesia or somewhere in Mumbai. People like our artist, which is really great, because the music that these guys represent are liked by fans. Makes it a lot easier for us to work with venues and promoters and the likes of Live Nations and the AEGs. Because like the tour we just did, right? We just sold out 37 shows around the planet, right? At every venue, whether it's 2 nights at the Apollo in London selling 7,000 tickets, or whether it's doing Cocoa Booth, or whether it's doing. So it's really come down to, if the music of these artists are reaching the people and the people really want to see them live, we will work with whoever needs to be to make that happen.
Yep. Just really quickly, I'm going to turn it over to two of my other panelists. But Christina, any thoughts? And I don't know if you've got any musical background as well, but if you have any thoughts for my musical friends and everything. And also, Jatovi is in the esports lane, so he may have some thoughts for you as well. But Christina, any questions or thoughts for the Dwadas and everything along those lines?
So while they were talking, I definitely thought, I have a private events business in Las Vegas, and recently we did a wedding, an Indian wedding, and it was amazing. The music, the garments, the way everybody was dressed, and it was just such a vibe. So the whole time they were talking about their passion for, you know, music and having that background. And I know that you guys were saying your parents, your children, you're all involved, and it definitely felt that way at the wedding. So I thought it was great.
Indian,
congratulate you guys.
Indians wedding is all about music and dance.
Oh, it was beautiful. One of the best weddings I've ever been to.
Well, I hope you have more of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I hope they call me again.
No doubt. Jacoby, any thoughts and everything? And by the way, Christina, I've also done some event planning and some event consulting, so we'll have to talk in some not too distant future, because that's definitely some of my lane. Because one of the things that even Kim knows that I'm involved with is the Road to the Apollo, which my good friend Captain Newborn takes winners up to the Apollo Theater in New York and has carte blanche, so we actually get to jump the line and don't have to stay in those lines a long time, and have had some success getting people onto those vaunted stages and everything. But that's been going on now for 10 years. It's actually a little bit over 10 years now. But then we started it at the Hayti Heritage Center, but now we've gone to about 15 or 20 different venues throughout the state of North Carolina. And I think that we've been contracted into other states like Tennessee. I think there might have been even been one in Texas and a couple of other places that it has been contracted out to do this event with, because it's a arrangement that he has with the owners of the Apollo.
Well, I would love for for us to take a trip one of these days. I'm actually from New Jersey, so that area, and I love New York and the Broadway and everything like that.
Mark is the archivist at the Apollo, so he's got access to music from every concert that's happened to Apollo, and he keeps telling me great stories about them.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt about that and everything. Jacoby, any thoughts or questions that you had for our guests, or either whether it's about the Energy Conference or about what the musicians or business owners are doing with their record label and all in that space? So any questions or thoughts that you had on either one of those topics?
I guess since we have our guests here with the music label and they're right down there in Cary, I guess a couple of questions, because one, I'm hooked on the Tiny Desk concert from NPR. Are you guys able to get your artists onto the Tiny Desk concert? Because
it happened August 15th. So if you go to NPR Tiny Desk, our artists are on NPR Tiny Desk.
Yes.
Love the Tiny Desk concerts.
Yes.
That's actually how I got introduced into to one of my favorite groups, which is Hermanos Gutierrez.
Okay.
Phenomenal guitarists. They're three brothers. They just play the guitar the whole time, and their music is episodic. So I love listening to their music. And I'm sure I've got to find you guys on the Tiny Desk concert as well.
Just look up Shakti Tiny Desk, and you will see them perform. It was August 15th. It was recorded, aired in October, and I think it's one of the most successful NPR concerts at the Tiny Desk. It's from what I heard from the producers.
Awesome.
Just a minor thing from the network. We actually have, I don't know if you know Shweta and Sloan, we actually run now 4 channels on Roku. One of them is sports and entertainment, and we do run entertainment. So if you have artists who want to have their artists shown on our network, our sports internet, just get with Mark, send the stuff over, and we'll get them exposure on the Pod TV network, which is right now has about 2.4 million views in 150 countries. So they'll have some international exposure, including people down below like Shaquille, who's from Australia, who has his own network that he runs in a radio network in Australia, as well as around the world. So we're actually local here in the Raleigh-Durham area, and if you want to get together, we're meeting Friday. That's Waduk. So the thing is, we can do that.
Welcome to the Waduk. We'd love to have you there. But just really
one question.
That's not my network. I'm one of the sponsors of that network, as I am for Pod. I will just say to my Indian friends, so my mother visited me for my birthday in December, and I've never really been into these Bollywood movies. They go for like 3 hours, and halfway through an action scene, there's a song, and I'm like, what is going on? I can't speak the language. She can, and my family can, but she insisted that I watched RRR. So I watched it. I enjoyed it. I ended up watching a few other films. I thought I was making some headway into Bollywood until she came down and said, that film's Tamil, the one that you're watching at the moment, and this other film is, mostly in Urdu. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. So it was a good introduction. I just wish it wasn't a 3-hour saga every time I went to watch one of these films.
Not all of them are 3-hour sagas.
No, everyone is not 3 hours.
Hey, just really quickly, because you kind of alluded to it earlier. How important is it? Because it's something we talk about. I talk about it usually on the online dinner party, but I'm going to bring it up here because y'all are both successful entrepreneurs, but you are also successful in that technology lane and everything. So how do you manage that work-life balance? Because it's something we talk about even on the news show and everything. And y'all are a husband and wife, and you just mentioned that you have a daughter and everything. And I don't know if there are any other kids, but how are you able to balance that work-life balance?
I mean, I'm mostly in technology. She handles the business aspects of music, and together with the artists, we are into the creative piece. So it's still working out more. We're still able to do it.
It's a work-life balance, basically, Mark. And as Shovik still has a full-time job with IBM. So he pitches in whenever he comes back in the evenings, and the weekends are also always in fact, when we did the whole Shakti project, all our weekends were gone just planning and doing logistics for Shakti, And
I think the great
one more
answer they're trying
aside
to
for
give you is that, like all entrepreneurs, the question is, what the hell is a work-life balance? We have no idea what that is if we're entrepreneurs.
there is no balance. But one aside also.
Is that Rex Lee in a suit? Looking good, Rex.
Yeah, that actually the network started as IBM TV. We had a 2-year contract with IBM, with a guy that headed the IBM IoT division there. And then IBM didn't want to use IBM TV, and so we switched to Pod TV. So you're actually looking at, if you look at some of our old content, you'll see IBM TV, and that's where it came from. It's now Pod TV. So we have a history there.
Definitely a history there. I see we're joined by Rex, and I want to.
Hi guys.
Yeah. Rex is.
We got Rex here, who's going to give us an update, a quick update, and then later today we're going to do a live show.
Right. You're on, Rex.
A little bit of feedback from me. I just need to turn your sound down.
How y'all doing?
Doing good.
So I have a report. I was a couple of days ago. I was able to attend a press conference with Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, as well as Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska. And prior to that, there were several speeches that have been given. One of them by by Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm. And what she was explaining to the audience is basically what John Podesta termed as government-enabled investment money, which is the Inflation Reduction Act money and the Omnibus Bill money from 2022, which adds up to about $780 billion that was set aside for green initiatives to help advance America as the leader in green energy. So one of the companies I was investigating, who was awarded the largest lithium mining rights in the U.S., was Lithium Americas, and they were awarded the bid to mine lithium, which is a rare earth element in Thacker Pass, Nevada, which would mean that an American company would hire American employees to mine lithium and compete against China. But that's not the case with Lithium Americas. Lithium Americas is a company that has GM is one of the backers of it, and GM was backing the deal. But the problem with Lithium Americas is they're a Canadian company, and they have an investor from China called Ganfeng, and Ganfeng is the largest investor in Lithium Americas. So in essence, this means that we're allowing foreign companies to come into the United States and mine rare earth elements such as lithium, or minerals such as cobalt, which are valuable to lithium batteries. And this created a big, huge stir here, because Senator Manchin and Sullivan had asked me to stay after the press conference. They wanted to know what my sources were, only to find out from another Bloomberg reporter that Joe Manchin had actually known about the deal before.
Hey, Rex, just really quickly along those same lines and everything. And
Joe Manchin actually championed the deal in the Senate. So basically, I don't know if he was being dishonest. I can't say he was, but they seem to act like they didn't know anything about the deal when in fact the deal was actually fast tracked through the Trump administration and approved during the Biden administration.
Hey, just really quickly, Rex, one of the questions I had, and I don't know if y'all have been talking about it, but I know that I think even Shaquille has brought it up on a couple of past shows and everything. And one of the shows that we'll be having later on this afternoon, which is Barbara Smith's show. She's friends with people from, I believe it's Uganda. So is there been any conversations about the role of the African nations in lithium and energy at the CERAWeek? Because I do know that there is a young lady that has an oil company. I wish I could think of her name. I think it's Benny or something like that, that is in Uganda. And there's a couple of other African countries as well. And a lot of what they're doing is what you're just talking about, which is in the lithium space. So I just wondered how much of that conversation has come up in the conference, or is that anything that you're aware of as well?
So I'd like to follow up with a little bit more information, if possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Joe Manchin went on to say that the investment in Lithium Americas shouldn't be more than 9%, but it doesn't matter. The two issues that I found with the deal is the fact that a foreign company, whether it's from Canada or China, doesn't matter to me, is unable to come into the United States and mine for rare earth minerals. This would be no different than if oil leases were turned over to Chinese companies to be able to drill oil in the United States.
Yeah.
And we'll have the rest of the story later.
Sounds good. So we'll have the rest of the story later. And I don't
Yeah,
know if
and
any...
also, one other point is the IRA is also helping to fund the deal. So that means the U.S. taxpayer is paying for this as well. And the lithium, we don't know if the lithium is going to be, once it's mined, we don't know if the lithium is going to be exported back out to China, refined, and then put into Chinese lithium batteries and then sold back to Americans. So it's a huge issue.
Gotcha. Hey, Shaquille, like I said, I mentioned what
And
I
I
know,
have
but
to
I
go.
know
And Christina
Yeah.
has to go.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up with about another 10 minutes.
But we're going to do the rest of the story later.
Should we hear from Christina before you guys go? Because she's been sitting there very patiently and hasn't had a chance to say anything yet.
Christina, you're on mute. And I know you spoke earlier.
Hey, Shaq, how's it going, man?
Good, Rex. You're looking good, buddy.
Yeah, and she
I'm
just
sorry
bounced off.
I'm not there. I had some other commitments, so I've been I haven't been on this year because I've had so many things on. So,
Hey,
Mark, sorry, you had a question?
No, I did my question because I know you worked with some of those companies as well. Barbara knew some of those companies, but what your thoughts around the African or other parts of the world in terms of energy and everything? Because, like I said, I just met this lady.
Hey, I'll
that is
talk to you guys later. The Epic Times is going to break the story tomorrow as well. So, talk to
All right,
y'all
sounds
later.
good. But your take, Shaquille, on the whole notion of some other parts of the world and the oil industry, because I know that they're at CERAWeek, which is here in the United States in Houston, but I do know that there are some people that are in that oil space, whether they're from India, whether they're from some of the African nations, whether they're from some of the other spots. And I know that you've worked with some of that space as well. So I just wanted your take on the oil industry as a global industry.
Well, I think we have to be careful not to demonize the oil industry on what they're currently doing or based on what we perceive to be their past sins. We rely on oil a lot, and even if we were somehow able to replace oil as being our source of energy, we would still need oil for a host of other things, from pharmaceuticals to manufacturing to all sorts of other things we need oil for. But I believe I'm more of an environmentalist than a climate change person. I do believe that the climate is changing. What we need to do about that is a question. But I think that we just have to be very careful when we look for alternatives that we're not making it worse. And in some cases, some renewable energy technologies don't actually work very well in certain locations. So I think we have to be location specific. We have to look for technologies. We have to be able to have open conversations. And in some relatively rare circumstances, oil is actually the best thing that we can use. But in other circumstances, we can use hydro, we can use solar power, wind power, and dare I say, a very controversial thing, but we can also look at nuclear in some places. I'm very fond of tidal power. that's something that I would like to see expanded on. The technology isn't there yet, but I think that has a lot of potential. And we also have obviously geothermal, which is one of my favorites, and hydropower, which is one of my favorites. So I feel like we have to be very careful about recognizing that we are mining lithium, we are mining other sorts of materials, and that may not necessarily be that much of a saving on the environment overall. So it's just a balance, like most things in life. It's just a balance.
No, Shaquille, just really quickly, and this is, I know we only got 5 minutes to go, but one of the things that happened in the news yesterday, and I know we talked about it earlier on Rick's show, Naked at Night and everything, is that Biden did an executive order where he's talking about, I think in 10 to 15 years, totally phasing out gas cars. And we definitely live in a car society. I don't necessarily have a car, and I was never a major car driver because of certain things in my life and everything, but I know my brother is big on cars and even has some fancy cars like the Slingshot and everything, but not fancy in your way of fancy, Shaquille, but fancy to some people and everything. But I was just wondering your take on this notion of phasing out cars and all along this lines, because this is an executive order that Biden signed, I believe it was yesterday.
Just for the record, I have a Bentley. That's not the only car I drive. My normal car is just a normal car like everybody else would have, right? I just take the Bentley out on special occasions. Look, I don't think that we're going to be able to move away, and I don't think it's practical for anybody to try to make large countries move away from gas-powered cars by 2030 or 2035, or these sorts of numbers that are put forth by Western countries. There are, good on you, Adam. There are some technologies that can help. For example, electric cars. Hey, that's a good technology. If you live in LA, excuse me, if you live in LA or you live in New York, you're stuck in traffic, you're not traveling very far distance-wise, but you're traveling for an hour to go 15 kilometers, fair enough. Electric cars can work quite well. In more rural settings, that may not be the right type of vehicle. Trucks and things like that are carrying much heavier loads, they might need something else. And until things like hydrogen power and other types of alternatives have been developed properly, it might be a matter that we just have to recognize we have to use gas for now. That doesn't mean that we're not trying to get rid of it, but it's something that we might need to look at for now. So again, I think we just need to be sensible about what's actually possible, do the things that are possible, and then focus on the things that we don't currently have the technology for, or we have the technology for, but they can actually be worse for us, and then just try to move in the right direction. So I think if I can say anything, if we can take politics out of it, I think you'll find the vast majority of people across the political spectrum would like to see us do these things in a way that's healthier for our planet. But unfortunately, politics gets in the way and ends up taking people to extremes one way or the other, pretty much like I said yesterday. I'll hand it to Rick and Jatovi.
Yep.
All right, so Biden's order also increases the orders the increase of fuel economy of new gas-powered vehicles. And that seems attainable. When you look at the behemoth vehicles that we drive compared to the vehicles of, 30 years ago, it seems like there's plenty of room to increase their fuel economy, maybe without reducing their volume in cubic. I hate being behind a modern truck. It's just gigantic. I don't know what the giganticness does compared to a Datsun pickup from 1993.
Yeah, just really quickly, Jatovi, and then we'll get ready to wrap up shortly and everything, but just really quickly.
I think what Shaq said, the key point is for now. And I think that's what we have to take from it, is that we have to change our mindset from, hey, we are going to always make money on oil, which a lot of companies do. And I think these initiatives are the for now part. We have to get behind the idea that we can create the technology. We need to work on that technology and focus on that technology. But in that transition time, understand that we have to utilize these things for particular purposes. So just like oil, we're not going to have big trucks coming off of diesel anytime quickly. but we have to understand that we can create that technology, and we should be pushing and investing and putting all that money into that technology so we can move to that. It's the same thing if you think about health. We used to take politics out of health. Politics are starting to seep into our health care system. But if you think about the science and the technology, like with cancer, we know that right now we have to utilize particular medicines to be able to work with cancer, but there are investments in cancer research to help with fighting cancer, and there are ideas that come about, and we're all for that. So yeah, I think it's that important now that we have
to on to the back of what you said there, Jatovi. Well, firstly, just in relation to healthcare, the unfortunate thing for the United States is that you guys make the investments, you guys charge other Americans huge amounts of money, but the rest of the world gets it for relatively cheaply on our universal healthcare plans. But I won't go into that debate. Just on the energy thing, if I can use an example, we know, for example, that planes that take off and go short distances, and look, I've taken those flights, San Francisco to LA, for example. Planes are actually really efficient once they're up in the air, but taking off and landing is not a particularly efficient way of doing things. So we need to look for alternatives to that. There's a lot of conversation about aviation. The fuel used in the aviation industry is actually relatively clean, but I haven't really heard outside of industry meetings, I haven't heard anybody talk about the type of fuel which is quite dirty that's being used in our ships, where we have all those ships crossing the oceans. The environmental impact of that is terrible, and I haven't heard much research on that. And unfortunately, when politics gets involved, politicians tend to focus on things that people can sort of see and relate to, and they tend to ignore those things that we don't see. I think this has to be industry and community driven, where we say, this is what we want. We don't know exactly how we're going to get there. Most people would like to see us be able to use predominantly renewable energy sources that minimize impact to the environment. That's what we all want to see. We don't know how to get there, but rather than calling everybody some woke maniac or some oil-loving, right-wing, horrible person, there is a balance, and I think we can find it. We just need to be able to have those conversations.
Hey, just really quickly, and I know we've got to end, but maybe just another minute or two, because I think both Rick and Jatovi had quick points and everything. But I will say that there is a show here on the network, which is about the cruise industry. It's called Good Shit Happens, and Cindy Bertram, who is our host of that show, has actually brought up that certain cruise industry ships do bring up that whole notion of cleaner energy. It's not all of the cruise industries, but she has pointed out a couple of the ship industries specifically that are using that, and I don't remember their names off the top of my head.
I'm also referring to ships being used to transport goods than the cruise industry, which pales in comparison.
Go ahead, Rick.
Compare a Dodge Charger today to a Dodge Charger from 50 years ago, which got 10 miles a gallon from a huge V8 engine. Today's Dodge Charger looks the same and sounds the same, but much lighter, much more fuel efficient, and the sound of that engine is a computer-generated fake engine sound. So we still get to have our toys plus fuel economy. We can do that.
My curiosity is now with, as you pointed out, Shaq, aviation, there's a lot of talk around aviation. My curiosity is if we can take some of the new technologies from aviation, because even with the rocket ships, they're talking about utilizing nuclear fission, which is actually it generates a ton more energy than actually nuclear fusion. So when these technologies come about, my curiosity is, can there be a push? And while there should be, I think there's a groundswell about, hey, we need to change, but I think it's our politicians and the top down that needs to realize you've got to get out of science and be honest with the people, because the arguments, just as you said, hey, we cannot attack each other saying you love oil. Well, let's talk about why it has to be a transition piece at this moment. We have to get away from the individuals always trying to demonize and going for that cheap, low-hanging fruit dollar, because with the coal country, one thing that Clinton did, and this is what got her in a ton of trouble, is she was talking about changing over the energy sector in the coal country, because coal is one of the dirty energy sources. Plus, she was talking about upgrading that area and giving new jobs. But when you're talking to individuals in coal country, they've been doing this their whole life. This is all they know. So she failed in educating them on what she wanted to do. And the Republican Party jumped on that and sold, hey, look, this is all it is. They're trying to take your jobs, which it wasn't that idea.
But you can't.
We've got to.
But you can't blame the Republican Party for doing that because, hey, it's politics, right? So that of course they're going to do that. This is the issue that we have here in Australia at the moment, is this desire to go away from coal and the conversation around coal being our source of baseload power, and the Australian energy market saying, look, you guys better get ready for rolling blackouts from next year because, you know, if we don't have coal, we don't have some sort of alternative, and you won't let us go to nuclear. We don't have the technology right now. We don't have the facilities right now. And that's where I'm saying I think we need to be able to have these, you know, proper conversations. Just as a quick side note, I'll go to you, Rick. I'll just give you one quick side note. You may be aware of a thing called AUKUS, AUKUS, which is the Australian, United States, and United Kingdom military pact, shall we say. Australia got into a little bit of trouble or a little bit of controversy because we cancelled our submarine order from France in order to buy them from the US, and then nuclear power submarines. So I was speaking to a relatively high-ranking person in the military of a particular country, and I said, well, if you can power submarines by nuclear, can't you power ships? Can't you power airplanes? Can't you power, you know, motor vehicles that way? I can't tell you what his answer was, but let's just say that no, that doesn't work as well as I thought it might have at first glance. Rick.
Yep, Rick, and then we'll wrap
So
up.
nuclear should be a much bigger deal. If you look at our biggest nuclear disasters, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, a lot of it is people being idiots and bypassing safety procedures causing the meltdowns. And plus, you know, nuclear engineering has progressed and reactors can be made even safer. You know, Fukushima was not designed properly for the potential of a tsunami, but once you recognize the risks, you can make reactors that are, you know, more resistant to catastrophe.
Yeah, no
Nuclear is relatively safe, Rick, but I'll just say this. Yeah. We need to make things that are idiot-proof, especially if we're going to go down the path of something like nuclear, which I think nuclear has so much potential. But we have to recognize that humans make errors. So we call them human errors. We need to make sure that we develop things. It's a relatively safe industry. They've made such great inroads. They've been able to avert all sorts of disasters. But we need to make sure that this is idiot-proof, that any kind of catastrophe could happen and it's not going to cause, you know, a nuclear explosion in that area. So, or a nuclear meltdown in that area. So again, it has potential. All of these technologies should be on the table. And again, depending on where you are, in some places, hey, let's put wind power in there because that's going to work the best. In other places, let's use geothermal because that's going to work the best. In other places, let's look at nuclear. And in some places, okay, we have to look at coal, we have to look at oil. But let's see those places where we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels.
But it also has to
the U.S. is down to 50,000 coal miners. So
it also has to be
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it also has to be the educational aspiration of for now. And as long as we can keep that part in there, I think, and educating that, hey, oil here for now works. It is our transition piece. Once we get the technology, then we can move out of it. But we're not focused so heavily on oil. And I think that's what's going to, if we can educate around that transition, that could bring more together, because that's truly where we all are, is we understand that, hey, we've got to get there. But I think the argument boils down to, hey, you love oil, that's why you want oil, rather than, hey, can we get to that transition piece and let's work together to figure out a way. Even though you're using oil now, let's move forward.
Yeah, speaking of transitions, we're going to transition on out of here. We'll have some more of these conversations on tomorrow. It was great having the folks from CERAWeek, some of our crew, as well as our folks from Abstract Logic, the music label. So it was a good conversation. I thought we got into some good, interesting things to talk about. And we'll have some more things to talk about on tomorrow's edition of World Edition. Of course, we've got World Politics coming back at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that'll be 2 p.m. for you folks on the West Coast and 4 p.m. for you folks on the Central, and I'm not sure what time it'll be in Australia because I don't know all the different various times.
I'll be in bed. I can assure you of that.
Sounds good. But we'll get ready to get on out of here. But hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, Shaquille. But it's been a fun conversation and definitely enjoyed it. And hopefully other people got some insights as well. But right now we're here to get on.